Just yesterday, US forces seized a sanctioned Venezuelan oil tanker being escorted by Russian naval ships in the North Atlantic, just days after the dramatic capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. After a dramatic, slow-speed pursuit from the Caribbean, the Marinero was finally boarded in the North Atlantic off Iceland. UK spy planes and ships supported US forces to take control of the vessel. No British personnel actually took part in the boarding of it, according to Defence Secretary John Healey. So, should we be doing more to help President Trump, or, Angela, does it make us more of a target? We remember Salisbury. We don't have to have a head-on confrontation with Russia to feel the consequences.
No, and I think if people want to target us and they have kind of nefarious political or toxic intent, then they will have that regardless. I think there's something slightly weird about the question, no disrespect to the question itself, but to the concept of us helping Trump, because we've literally, we've got the most powerful country in the world. He's already shown a fairly dismissive approach towards Starmer.
But this is about NATO pulling its weight.
Yes.
He has said that's what he wants to see. If it's a European problem, and this is off Iceland, so you could call it part of our problem, if you like, he needs to see us taking part.
Yeah, but I also think that what I was going to say is I think we have to be strategically prudent. So in this case, our military offered RAF surveillance and we offered some of the kit. Obviously, there was an impact because it was quite close to where geographically it had ramifications. I mean, when we look at the size of the British military now, I think our army is the smallest it's been since the Napoleonic Wars. We're not spending enough. The hike in defence spending isn't going to happen anytime soon. Certainly not in the course of this year. Certainly not here and now when everything is becoming inflamed. So I think there has to be an element of self-interest as well. And I think that way we can tolerate and understand it more. It would be very bloody-minded and stupid to say we're not going to provide kit when it's literally coming past our borders.
So providing kit, where's the line then for you? Is it like if we had boarded that vessel, does that suddenly become inflammatory, something that Vladimir Putin looks at and says, right, OK, now that is outright aggression, or?
Well, I don't know Putin personally, for newsflash, but I would imagine he's not a man of nuance. And if he sees you're on the wrong side, you're on the wrong side. So I care less about that and more seeing it as something that's going to escalate, because as soon as you put boots on the ground or on a boat, if you like, then suddenly there's something very tangible and concrete about your participation of a military initiative or operation. And I think that in itself sort of very visibly aligns you with the United States. Okay. But Starmer has made it clear what his position is on Putin anyway, so I don't think there's going to be any love lost there, to put it sort of mildly.
We were talking yesterday with Tobias Ellwood, former Defence Minister. OK, and he was saying they're at war with us, we're not at war with them. That feels like a very fine distinction. Is it one that you get, Henry?
I do understand it, yeah.
Vladimir Putin sees us as the enemy, but how far we go in helping Donald Trump would define whether we are then at war with him.
I don't think Putin sees us as a serious enemy. He sees much of Western Europe as weak, as decadent, as fallen, and he likes Trump because Trump sees the Western alliance, the European part of it, as similarly weak, decadent, falling apart, subject to cultural decline. I don't see this particular crisis as Britain supporting Trump. It's Britain supporting Denmark and Greenland, and also thinking about Britain supporting Ukraine. Because if we ally ourselves reasonably closely to Trump and show him that we, out of all the NATO members, are supporting him, as we have in the past, in Iraq, with terrible consequences, of course, in Afghanistan, with terrible consequences, he won't be able to level that charge at us. And let's remember, just a day or two after the boarding of this boat, Sir Keir Starmer had a conversation with Donald Trump in which he was able to raise the issue of Greenland and NATO. He was able to do it in a much stronger way than he would have if we hadn't supported in this endeavour. OK, so it's that critical friend role that you're talking about, that effectively we're saying, we will help you and support you. And that gives us the right to have that private phone call. We don't know the details of that phone call when it comes to something that directly affects us in Europe. I say this. all the terrible US record of interference in Latin America, in the Middle East, especially in Africa as well. People forget just how much instability, how many coups the US sponsored in Africa in the 50s and 60s, including Lumumba in Congo, including Nkrumah in Ghana. But here we are in the 21st century. It's the era of strongmen. We've got to work out where we stand.
Okay. Also, I'll just say very quickly that this ship, this ghost ship, has a sort of it's been defined as having a nefarious past when it's come to being used as some kind of vessel in order to transport oil and be used for the purposes of financing Russia, Iran, who are the greatest sponsors of terror. And we know in this country we have copped it big time in terms of terrorist atrocities, which have been sponsored by Iran, even though they've been in the name of other extremist groups.
OK, let's take some calls. Josh is in London. Do you think we should be helping Donald Trump more achieve his aims in global politics, Josh?
Absolutely. Let's look at this from a lawyer's point of view. OK? I'd like to ask the panel, what international statute has been broken by taking Maduro?
I mean, there's the issue of sovereignty, isn't there, Josh? That if somebody is a leader of a country, and we accept that Maduro, there are many questions about the election. A lot of people accept that election wasn't run fairly. But the idea of breaking borders to take the leader of a country, I mean, that doesn't give you sovereignty in Venezuela. It doesn't give the Venezuelan people control over their own country.
Tell me the statute. Tell me the statute. Tell me
Josh,
is Josh a lawyer?
That was broken.
But Josh,
Yeah.
I mean,
Josh, tell me the statute.
But Josh, listen to this. There is a UN Charter. There are lots of leaders who win elections by 90%, who gerrymander, who bully, who brutalise, and some of them don't accept the will of the people. Look at January the 6th, 2021. That particular individual who lost the election, refused to accept it, still doesn't accept it, managed to get re-elected. So the United States and some other countries in the alliances have a pick and mix attitude towards international law. So in a way, the question's irrelevant, Josh. It's about strongman politics. And the question is, what do we do about it?
But Trump was democratically elected.
On January the 6th, 2020,
let's let Josh answer. Let's let Josh answer.
Let me finish. It's your opinion, okay? It's not a statute. It's not a law. You haven't cited any statute that is broken. If I get arrested, the arresting officer has to tell me what law are broken. Like, for example, it could be Section 50 or PACE or Section 43 of the Terrorism Act, okay? Nobody said that. What he has done, he has blocked the legal winner of the elections from taking part. He has poisoned the United States. He's attacked the United States with drugs. The United States has defended itself from the drug cartels by taking this guy. And they have legal precedent in this.
Josh,
let's imagine that sitting here in the UK, suddenly Germany decides to come invade the UK, take away our leader, our stated leader, and replace him and run the country ourselves. We would be surrendering our sovereignty, wouldn't we, at that stage?
No,
and surely, as a principle, we have to ask a question about whether that's acceptable at any country in the world.
No, you're talking nonsense. If you have a leader that comes along in this country, ignores the election, starts poisoning Germany, if he's committed a crime, they have the right to arrest him, because they are being attacked by us. Now, the other thing about
here's where we have the pick and mix.
Can I tell you about the Venezuelan?
Josh, you've had a good run. Okay. At the same time,
Josh, we need to hear Henry now.
Yeah. We actually do have a former president, a guy called Hernandez of Honduras, who was sentenced to 45 years in an American jail after a trial for poisoning the US with cocaine. It was proven. Guess what? Trump's just pardoned him. So this is pick and mix. It's not real.
But
he's not the first leader to take that approach.
Did he serve a sentence?
Yes, he was in jail.
Yes.
He was in jail.
He served a sentence. So he served a sentence. He was arrested. He was under the law. Now, the Venezuelan oil, let me tell you something. My son's a Royal Marine, okay? Now, I'll tell you something about this, right? He, has been on. Okay, I won't discuss the operations, but in Biden's time, there were oil tankers being taken under covert ops. Okay, let me tell you that. But it was never reported in the police in the papers. The other thing about this is Venezuela is a part of an axis where they come and stay putting this money around for terrorism. Okay, oil is going to terrorism. Okay, and a lot of this stuff, yeah, that you see being turned into ships being into Russian and Colombian and Venezuelan at the middle of the sea, yeah, is sanctioned by those countries.
Jerry, do you think it's possible to look at what Donald Trump's done and maybe from certain parts of the world look at that as an act of terrorism? What do you think?
Actually, I think whatever Trump does, it's down to him. He's in America. He's the president of the USA. We are England. We, the UK, have nothing to do with this. It's nobody's attacking us. But it seems to me that our country, for some reason, has been poking the bear for quite some time.
Jerry?
And Putin has stated several times he's not interested in the UK. He's not coming to attack us. And we should stop interfering in other people's wars or actions.
Jerry, do you remember what happened in Salisbury? Because I have a feeling the people of Salisbury might disagree with you. When two Russian agents were dispatched to Salisbury, where they used a nerve agent, which tragically took the life of one person, affected the life of others, and could have had a much more serious effect. You know, talking to Tobias Ellwood yesterday, he made the point that this is a grey war, if you like. This is a grey war which is happening not in the traditional way with two forces facing off against each other, but it's going through cyber attacks, it's going through attacks like that. Can we simply turn our back on that, do you think?
Well, why wasn't it addressed at the time? And, you know, at the end of the day, the UK has done things in other countries, and I know, I've seen it firsthand, I know about it firsthand, that we have never, ever had to answer to. But as far as I'm concerned, I like Trump. I like what he's doing for his people and his country. But I honestly believe the UK is in such a mess, such a terrible mess at the moment. We cannot afford to get involved in other people's wars. But we should be looking after our own country, getting our own country.
So Jerry's saying not our fight. We should concentrate on what's going on here because there are plenty of problems to sort out in the UK.
And I have an awful lot of sympathy with that view, Jerry, because I think ultimately, although we like to feel we're all the moral arbitrators, we have to think about the national interest, not least because we have to be practical about it. As I mentioned before, small army, limited resources, not enough money in the defence budget to encourage that. And unless we start thinking about conscription, which is a whole different discussion, then we're going to always be sort of slightly on the back foot. But I think things like being cooperative in terms of offering surveillance and bases, which we did in the Second World War as well, is not unhelpful as long as it doesn't contribute to making that a more an inflammatory action. And I think that's why the UK approach has to be quite nuanced. I think I do agree with you broadly, and I'm sort of a reluctant fan of Trump in the sense, don't have palpitations, Henry. I'm a reluctant fan of Trump in the sense that he is a man of action, and I think that's because often he holds up a mirror to our weather-vane Prime Minister who seems to be unable to make a single decision.
Isn't it incredibly an old-fashioned way of fighting a conflict or taking on an aggressor to say that we have to sign up young people to do things that they would not dream of having to do, to force them into military roles and put their lives on hold and put their lives at risk possibly, rather than fighting the smart way in the way that we are so far by offering that technological support?
No, and I understand that, and I think ultimately modern warfare is quite different. They're not going to be in the trenches. You will have boots on the ground, but in a minimal way compared to how wars have been fought in the past. My view, for when I am Prime Minister, so take note, will be that we should have some kind of national service for the year between leaving school and going on to whatever young people do next, further education or whatever, which involves doing community work, community projects, but that way you sort of imbue in young people a sense of patriotism and the need to be available. But that doesn't mean send them out to war or start doing kind of, military manoeuvres.
OK, I'm sure Henry's got something to say about that, but I want to hear first from Scott in Lincolnshire. Scott, do you think we should be helping Donald Trump more achieve his aims, policing Russia, policing Iran, and this trade that seems to be going on between them and Venezuela in oil?
Do you know what, your previous caller, Jerry, I completely concur. I mean, I served in the armed forces, joining just after 9/11 at the age of 16 and then deploying to Iraq at the age of 18, going into the intelligence roles. I was in infantry, but went into the intelligence role in infantry. And then, obviously, 2006, a discussion about something that happened in Salisbury later on. But in 2006, people may remember Alexander Litvinenko was killed in London by the Russians. I was then deployed on a holiday to St. Petersburg to do investigatory work not long after that incident in the November of 2006. So we're not the only country that's ever done anything outside our own country. And in fact, Donald Trump, I've just been to America for the last month with my husband. I then went to America in May last year and looking to move to the States. People only care about one thing. Can they put food on their table? Can they put food on the table? Can they feed their kids? And can they fuel up their car to get to work to feed their families? And frankly, if we are, as Donald Trump is doing what he's doing, hopefully bringing down the price fall globally, I think a lot more people are concerned about energy prices, their housing, the price of heating their homes, industrial transport to get food to their tables, and filling up their cars. I think that's the main concern of most people these days, other than, I wonder what the fantastic Donald Trump is doing. Do you know what I mean?
Scott, it's a great attempt at the accent, I've got to say that. But listen, I think the other thing that people are really concerned about is about the future of their kids. And as they're going through 16, 17, 18, do you really want them off fighting a war in a foreign land?
Oh, no,
would you rather all those domestic concerns you're talking about, that they get to enjoy them as well?
This is true. I mean, I joined because I was impressionable 15-year-old, saw the World Trade Centers happen, turned 16, and then was pushed on this narrative that the bad guys are in the Middle East and we should go and invade. And really, after the army, I then did private maritime security for a Korean firm, where I do armed security on ships going through the Straits of Hormuz all the way to getting off in Sri Lanka or getting off in the Red Sea if they were car carriers. And what I saw was oil tanker after oil tanker. Sea Empress, I worked on a big 2 million barrel of oil tanker leaving Iraq, Qazar port, one I protected in 2004, 2005 and 2006, leaving those ports full of oil, full of blood money, from invading, overthrowing a country and being lied to. I don't think the armed forces itself is a good thing. We lie to young people, impressionable young people, and get them to do things that leave them with nightmares for years to come. There is not one night I don't wake up screaming. It's caused divorces, it's caused alcoholism, it's caused marital breakdowns in my life, and the army has a lot to pay for that. And what you get, maybe a slightly better reaction time for talking therapies, so it won't be 4 months before you're seen and end up like a lot of my friends, homeless and on drugs that I served with, who I see regularly about my town, because they can't cope anymore, because the army leaves you with nothing other than nightmares. And I wouldn't want anyone to go through it, but the fact we're poking the bear is not true.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Done nothing.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Scott.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so sorry to hear that. Scott, for you
really
and your friends. I mean, it is, when we talk about conscription, Angela, isn't that what we are letting our kids in for? Is we start down that road and suddenly they're involved in a conflict at an age where they are incredibly impressionable, and they are left with that legacy of young men, young women on the streets who are carrying around the nightmare with them.
Well, first of all, I think I have absolutely massive sympathy for Scott. That sounds devastating, the experience you've been through, but that seems to be that there's been no care or due diligence on the part of the army and the military in terms of looking after its personnel once they are back on.
And us as a society as well.
Us as
it's
a society.
Not just their responsibility.
But we have to accept that as we have through the ages, there are aggressors who want to do harm to this country, and we have to be able to defend ourselves. And that's what I'm thinking about.
Just wanted to, but the other thing I took from what Scott was saying there, Henry, is that passage, that economy, grey economy of oil that seems to be fueling everything that Vladimir Putin wants to do, from Iran, Venezuela, to Russia, that needs to be stopped. If the
in
sanctions
principle,
are to
yes.
make any difference at all.
But what's interesting is that Russia is not under any UN sanction, nor is Venezuela. Iran is, but remember, Russia is one of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, so it would block and veto any attempt to sanction it. So would China. And Donald Trump has a very odd attitude towards Russia. On the one hand, he wants to get really, really close to Putin. On the other hand, he allows his soldiers or his Marines to board this particular vessel.